The reminder. Okay, so now we're recording and it's in progress. Yeah, so today we're going to talk for a few minutes about Rosh Chodesh, which literally means the first day of the new Hebrew month. So in Judaism, it doesn't apply to any of the Gregorian calendar months. It just applies to Jewish months, of which there are 12. How surprising. Um, and this idea of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the new Hebrew month, is a somewhat celebrated day. It's not a festival, it's not a holiday, but it still has a lot of gravitas in the Jewish calendar and in the Jewish community. It happens to be, interestingly enough, the very first commandment, the first mitzvah given to the people as a nation, chapter 12 in Exodus. This is before they leave Egypt. Um, And it is conjunction with the idea that before you leave Egypt, you're supposed to have what we would call a Seder. You're supposed to bring a Paschal offering. I think it might have been the only one they did in 40 years, and then they got into the land of Israel, and then they continued to offer the Passover offering. But it's the first commandment given to the nation, if you will. So in the book of Genesis, you find only three commandments. One is to be fruitful and multiply. The other one is to circumcise 8-day baby boys. But again, that's given to private individuals. And then the third commandment, the third mitzvah given in the book of Genesis, is the idea of not eating the sciatic nerve. This is at a time when Jacob was battling the angel. And right before the end of that battle, the angel strikes Jacob in the sciatic nerve area, causing him to limp. So at that point, God says, "And thou shalt not eat the sciatic nerve." And there are many reasons for that. But so now comes commandment number four out of 613 commandments. And that's exactly at the beginning of Exodus chapter 12, where God says that the first of the month of Nisan, which is the month that we celebrate Passover, the first of the month of Nisan shall be the head of the year for you. But he also means to say that the first day of every Jewish month will be a special day for you. So, as I mentioned last week, we're on a lunar calendar. Some people call it a luni-solar calendar. And I may have mentioned last week that ideas of the calendar, how it was formed, how it plays out, and everything else. There's only 354 plus a smidge days in the Jewish calendar, 365 plus a smidge in the solar calendar. How do we deal with that? How do we make up for 11 days difference every year, etc.? I find reading about the Jewish calendar the most confusing of many areas in Judaism. So whenever I see something like, "Oh, this will explain it simply," I know within 3 minutes I'm not going to get it. So part of how we mark Rosh Chodesh, again, literally in Hebrew, the first of the month, Rosh Head, Chodesh, the first of the month, how we mark it, the rules of how it was declared in early days, etc. I find all of this a little bit birdies tweeting above my head, and I can never really get a good understanding of it. But here's some stuff to know that I think is interesting. So, uh, since the year roughly 360 or about 400, comes along an authority named Hillel II. Hillel II. This is not the same Hillel that we studied often in Pirkei about the chapters of the Fathers. Hillel II, finally, after a whole bunch of confusion and whatever, how do you declare Rosh Chodesh? How do we let everybody else know it's Rosh Chodesh? We don't have WhatsApp groups way back then. We don't have telephones. We don't have fax machines. How do you let everybody know? And once you declare Rosh Chodesh, that day is Rosh Chodesh. And depending on what day Rosh Chodesh is we depend on what other holidays are coming up in that month to know exactly when they fall. So it's a very complicated issue. Anyway, In about the year 360 or 400, give or take, Hillel II finally prepares a fixed calendar, which we still use today. So this is what, 1600 years old plus? He doesn't have a computer. He doesn't have a generator. He doesn't have a this. He doesn't have AI. How in the world does he figure out from that point until even today and beyond? I have a 200-year calendar that ends in the year 2100. We're at only, what is it, 2026? And it ends at 2100. I already know when every holy day, celebration day, etc., is going to be. And whoever prepares the next 200 is also going to be doing it on the shoulders of Hillel II, who somehow figured it out all these hundreds of years ago without benefit of electronics and everything else. And I don't know how it was done. Uh, when they had to do a baseball schedule for all the teams, I don't remember how many teams there are now. When I grew up, as 10 and 10 or something like that in each league. How they figured out the home and away schedule without all this technology and it all had to match. I have no idea how that was done. Anyway, so now we have a fixed calendar. We know when Rosh Chodesh is. I can tell you the next Rosh Chodesh for the next month of Tammuz is going to be June 15 and 16, because sometimes there's only a one day Rosh Chodesh, and sometimes there's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. On what does that depend? Well, we'll mention it in a few moments. Um, yeah. So before Hillel II comes along and declares this is going to be the pattern for the next blah blah years, there is a system where various people are trained to become witnesses in the phases of the moon. And these people are trained by then the ruling body called the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin trains X amount of people that towards the end of the month or so, when they sense it's the end of the month, to go out and be a lookout for when are they seeing the tiniest sliver of the moon. And when those witnesses see it, and they go back to the Sanhedrin, report what they've seen. The Sanhedrin, if it's happy with what they've reported, if it all makes sense to them, and they ask them a ton of questions. What was the crescent like? Was it a waning crescent? Was it this? Questions that I wouldn't even know how to answer, even if I was one of the great witnesses. So they would ask him a whole bunch of questions, and if they were satisfied with the responses, Sanhedrin would say, "Oh, then today is Rosh Chodesh." So how do you get the word out all those years prior to today without electronics and without the benefit of all kinds of gizmos and whatever? So what do? They declared that day to be the first day of Rosh Chodesh of that new month, Jewish month. Um, and then they would light flares and fires on mountaintops in Israel so that when people would see the flares and fires on top of the mountains, they knew that that day was Rosh Chodesh, and now everything else coming up in the month of whatever the new month is, now we know that on the 5th is this day, and on the 12th is that day, and on the 19th is the, or something like that. So that was the original way they disseminated the information. However, the books will tell you that there were some very subversive individuals who wanted to fool around with the system. And instead of lighting them, the flares and the fires on the first day of the month, they might light it 2 days early, 2 days later, just to confuse everybody. And now the Sanhedrin had a problem. Now people are getting confused because some people are being very dishonest and being very disorderly about the messages they're sending. So the Sanhedrin had to deal with that problem. So what did they do? Now they're going to send messengers. Instead of lighting flames and fires on top of the mountains to let people know today is Rosh Chodesh, this is the first day of the new month, they had messengers going from place to place, including outside of Israel. So that's got to be quite a time commitment. Every month, different people would be on their horses, donkeys, whatever, and they would have to go to different parts of where the Jewish people lived in the globe and let them know that we just celebrated Rosh Chodesh, and therefore you should know that X things will happen this month. We have commemoration days, we have a Passover, we have a Shavuot, we have a Sukkot, we have a Rosh Hashanah, we have a Yom Kippur, whatever it is. So it started out with flares and fires and then eventually became individuals who traveled as messengers of the temple, messengers um, of the Sanhedrin. So that's pretty much how it got disseminated. It sounds so crude, you know, that you're depending on flares and fires and gentlemen riding on animals to disseminate this information. But, you could ask yourself, what other means did they have short of what we have today, which is great communication possibilities, but they didn't have it back then. So that's what they had. As crude as it was, that's what they had. Um, yeah. So sometimes we have a 1 day Rosh Chodesh. If the Jewish month that you're leaving, the Jewish month that you're leaving, had 30 days, then the 30th day was the first day of Rosh Chodesh, and the first day of the new month was the second day of Rosh Chodesh. And that's still in place. If you look at a Jewish calendar, you'll see some Rosh Chodeshes are just a 1 day. If the previous month had 29 days, it was a 1 day Rosh Chodesh coming up. If it had 30 days, it was a 2 day Rosh Chodesh. And again, you'll still see that on the calendar, Rosh Chodesh in two contiguous squares on the calendar. If it's only a 1 day, it'll just say it in one of the squares where it's actually the first day of the new Jewish month. So I want to read you. I'm just looking at a Siddur, is a prayer book put out by the Koren Publishing Company. So the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh is going to be observed of the new month. There is a special prayer that the congregation says called Blessing the New Month. It's called in Hebrew Birkat HaChodesh. We are ready to bless the new month. And this is another way that we have nowadays to let people know that Rosh Chodesh is coming. If you're in the synagogue and you're there on the Shabbat before the Rosh Chodesh is coming up the following days, you are going to know when Rosh Chodesh is because it's being announced. So just listen to a little bit of what the prayer says. Now everybody is standing. Okay, we've come to this special prayer on the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh. Everybody is standing to imitate that the Sanhedrin stood when the witnesses came. They stood and listened to the testimony. As the leader of the service is ready to do this prayer, there's a gentleman on one side of him and a gentleman on the other side of him to imitate the two witnesses that used to be employed by the Sanhedrin. So he's got one person on each side. And here's what the prayer says. May it be your will, Lord our God and God of our ancestors, to renew for us this coming month. So we're now focused on Rosh Chodesh is coming up. Let it be a month for good and blessing. Grant us long life, a life of peace, a life of goodness, a life of blessing, a life of sustenance, a life of physical health. So it's not just spiritual things, but help us to be healthy. A life marked by reverence for heaven and dread of sin. A life without shame or disgrace. A life of wealth and honor. A life in which we have love for the Torah and reverence for heaven, a life in which our heart's desires are fulfilled for good. Amen. So usually the congregation says this verse silently themselves. When they're done, the leader of the congregation who's leading the service will then repeat it, very often with a lovely melody, and people hum along and sing along. It's a very, very uh, beautiful prayer. And then he is handed the Torah scroll, which on Shabbat morning has not yet been put away in the ark. The Torah scroll is still out and among the people. He is handed the Torah scroll, and the leader of the service says, May you perform miracles for our ancestors and redeem them from slavery to freedom. Redeem us soon and gather in our dispersed people from the four quarters of the earth so that all Israel may be united in friendship, and let us say Amen. And now he gets very specific. the new month, the new Hebrew month of, and he fills in what's the new Hebrew month. So in the Jewish calendar, the new Hebrew month that will be inaugurated June 15 and 16, or 14 and 15, whatever it was, that new month is called Tammuz. Tammuz. So the leader of this prayer will say, the new month of Tammuz will occur on what days of the week? It'll occur on Tuesday and Wednesday of the coming week. May it come to us and all Israel for good. So now he's not just making a general announcement, he's announcing the name of the new month. He's announcing exactly what days it'll be, and that's what the Sanhedrin used to do. So whatever is being done here in this prayer is imitating a lot of what the Sanhedrin did. We're kind of echoing what they did. We're taking us back to that time. And then it's all closed with the following. May the Holy One, blessed be He, renew this month for us and for all His people, the house of Israel, for life and peace, gladness and joy, salvation and consolation, as we all say, Amen. So that's what it says in the Ashkenazi prayer books. In the Sephardi prayer books, it says this: May the Holy One, blessed be He, renew this upcoming month for us for good and for blessing, for joy and for gladness, for redemption and comfort and consolation, for a good livelihood, for peace and for life, that we should only hear good things. And if it's the winter season, let there be rain in its proper time, that we should all have good health, and we should all be blessed by the coming of the Messiah, the Mashiach, and let us all say Amen. So um, those are the two versions, one Ashkenazi, one Sephardi. The Sephardi is a little bit longer, and I like it because of that. It takes in a lot more wishes. And the Ashkenazi is quite a bit shorter. So how important is Rosh Chodesh? It gets announced on the Shabbat before it happens. We want everybody to know when it's going to be. Any questions so far about Rosh Chodesh? I mean, we've just scratched the surface, but any immediate questions or comments, concerns, or even a general, huh? What? Yeah, go ahead, Bob. Just unmute yourself.
I have questions, but you might want to wait to the end. Um,
Okay.
I don't know if because one of the things that has come up just very recently um with people that we talk to, they keep telling us about this Essene calendar.
Oh man, that
Have you
came up
heard of it?
last week or something close to that.
And okay,
Yeah.
and because they
What did
supposedly
Stephen say
found,
last week? The calendar of Enoch.
Yeah,
yeah,
Enoch.
supposedly Enoch created the calendar, a solar calendar, and that's what the Jews were supposed to follow. But then it was changed to lunar, which I don't see that anywhere. And then
I'd
there's
never
like
heard of it. I'd never heard of it. That doesn't mean
and
it's not
Passover
around, but I never heard of it.
and Passover always falls on Tuesday.
In the Enoch calendar, it
It's like
always falls on Tuesday.
yeah.
Well, we did discuss last
So
week that the reason, since the lunar and solar calendar are off each year by about 11 days, we have to, in every 19-year cycle, we have to insert 7 times an extra month to keep Passover as a springtime holiday.
yeah,
Because that's
I
what the
guess the
Torah
one
says.
thing
It's a springtime holiday. So don't celebrate in October. And it could easily
that
go haywire unless you dropped in these extra months every few years.
right. I guess the one thing I'd want to know or have with me are like scriptures that talk about the full moon or the uh, full moon or the
New moon.
new moon. You
New
know,
moon,
talking
right?
about full moon and new moon. On hand. I know David when he ran was running from Saul. It was supposedly on Rosh Chodesh, I think, because he was more hidden. Because like supposedly the moon was a new moon, making it harder for him to be spotted or something. I
Oh,
think that's the story.
okay. So that's possible.
But I'd like to know. what would be some good verses to support that the head of the month is always it has always been from the new like the sliver or from the
From the sliver, right?
yeah
Yeah, it always is at its tiniest sliver.
yeah
And the middle of the Jewish month is always a full moon. So the
right
15th of the Jewish month, it's always a full moon. As a matter of fact, in the movie Ten Commandments, the Cecil B. DeMille film, the Jewish people are shown to leave shown to leave Egypt. And there's a scene where there's a picture up in the sky where it's a sliver of a moon. Well, they didn't leave in the beginning of Nisan, they left in the middle of Nisan.
right
So there's
right
a whole
after
website of people that point out inaccuracies in that movie.
yeah
This is not my hobby, but yeah, so even in that movie where it was supposed to depict a full moon, it just shows the tiniest sliver of the moon. Yeah, John, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was just going to add for Bob that I mean, we've probably spoken the same circles with friends that kind of have some of those interesting ideologies. But I would say, one place I would always go with them is one, I would show them in Devarim the verses that talk about the Sanhedrin, or then it was the men of the Great Assembly, or of the 70 elders, actually, then of
Right.
having the authority, being given the
Yes.
authority by
Yes.
Hashem to judge and make rules. And then we have as late as the Mishnah, which we know was written down in the what hundreds, 120 or something, when it was actually formally written
200,
down.
200 to 500.
Yeah, that there is specifics in there talking about the sliver and how they were to cite it and go into like go to Shammai at the time, and or whoever was in, they had a poster on the wall, and like you were saying, Rabbi, what does it look like? So there are specifics in the mission that talk about the sliver that you could point them to, and then also in the Torah about Sanhedrin having authority. That's what I
Yeah.
always did.
Okay. That's a good way to do it. I think that authority is given in Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 17, if I'm not
17,
mistaken, something like
right?
that, where God gives the authority to them to promulgate whatever laws they feel might be necessary at the time. So here's some interesting things to know, which I think the average Jew with an average Jewish education may not be aware of. So I'm letting you in on a very close circle here. Uh, a lot of people think that Rosh Chodesh is like a kind of a moon worship. But it really is seen as an extension of God's supervision of the world. This is one of God's agents. Full moon, half moon, whatever. The moon is considered to be one of God's agents of supervision of the world. We're interested in the holidays and the seasons being observed at the proper time. So we're not worshiping the moon. We're looking towards the moon to give us guidance. So we're not sitting there and bowing to it and uh, suggesting that it has any kind of independent power. What we are saying is that when God gave this as the fourth out of 613 commandments, he meant Rosh Chodesh to be to show the way. By what calculus do you figure out when your important days are? And that calculus is done by noticing the phases of the moon. So, for example, if all you see is like three-quarters of a moon, in terms of Jewish law and practice, it would really have no practical application. What does have a practical application is either the tiniest or the full. So there, it's not a matter of moon worship, but we do look towards the moon to give us guidance about upcoming days, holidays, when they're going to be celebrated, commemorated, etc. Also, the moon symbolizes the waxing and waning of the Jewish people, and that is an unfortunate part of our Jewish history. There are times when we are a lot of people in the Jewish community, a lot of people. And then unfortunately something happens, and then half of us are decimated, a third of us are decimated. or a chunk of us are killed, etc. So when we look at the moon and we see its different phases, that it grows and then wanes and it waxes and it wanes, it is a representation of the Jewish experience. Sometimes we shine brightly, and sometimes we are seemingly ready to disappear. And just when we're ready to disappear and our influence is ready to disappear, all of a sudden we bounce back and we have rebirth and renewal. So we call that first of the month Rosh Chodesh, but Chodesh is also related to the Hebrew word Chadash, which means new. There's a renewal. And just as the moon is renewed, so you would say, all of the astronomers here on this Zoom call, you would say the moon is not renewing. It's what you can see regarding the moon as it relates to the shadows created by the sun. And the moon is not changing. It's just what we can see of the moon. Okay, it's a good point. In any case, maybe there's some kind of a very strong attraction between the Jewish people and the moon because of its ability to be full, and then it almost looks like it's disappearing, and then we bounce back with full vigor, and then we're chopped down again in many different ways, and then we have renewal and rebirth, and then again something in our history causes uh, a chunk of us to disappear, etc. So, so we're not worshiping the moon, but there are aspects of the moon that we see ourselves in it in terms of rebirth, renewal, disappearance, rebirth, renewal. It's a whole cycle. There's something that we see about ourselves in the cycle of the moon. Now, there's a
Rabbi,
day,
what was the term you used for the Hebrew term for new?
Chadash, Chadash,
Hadash. Okay.
Chadash, Chodesh, Chadash. They almost sound identical. So whoever's the Zoom user that just came on, hello, hello. Good to have you. I'm not sure who you are because there's no name on the bottom.
There he
But
is.
okay. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've been talking about Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the new Hebrew month, and why it's special, how it's celebrated, how it was disseminated way before there were all kinds of Facebook groups and etc. The day before Rosh Chodesh has an official name. It's called Yom Kippur Katan, the minor Yom Kippur, which some Jews use as a fast day to atone for what, you may ask? To atone for Adam's eating of the forbidden fruit. So some people use that day before Rosh Chodesh as a fast day, meaning fast day from morning till evening, not from the night before, like we would have on Yom Kippur. It's a day fast day, morning till evening. Rosh Chodesh is considered a special day for Jewish women. How do you like that? Why? What's the connection between Rosh Chodesh and women? So our tradition teaches us that the women, when it came time to make the golden calf, uh, at that time, Aaron, the high priest, brother of Moses, asked everybody to give in their precious stones and jewelry and gems, whatever, so that he could create this golden calf. According to our tradition, the women did not contribute. They did not contribute in any way to that. And not only that, but when the sanctuary was built and it needed to be dedicated, and when Moses called for people to bring their donations so the sanctuary could be a big, beautiful, spiritual place, the women were one of the first ones to contribute all of their precious stones and gems. Thank you for not asking me what precious stones and gems what did they have? But if you did ask me, we would say, if you remember before the Jews left Egypt, or whatever you want to call them at that time, the Israelites, before they left Egypt, they cleared the wealth from the Egyptians, which they understood could be taken for all those years of free labor and free service. So they walk out of Egypt eventually with a lot of good looking stuff, gold, silver, whatever. And so that's what they did not dedicate their silver and gold and precious gems to the building of the golden calf. Where did they put it? When Moses asked for contributions, they brought it for the building of the sanctuary in the desert, and and it's recognized that the sanctuary was dedicated on Rosh Chodesh of Nisan. So that's, in a sense, how the women get connected to Rosh Chodesh. When was that sanctuary in the desert dedicated? First day of Nisan, the Rosh Chodesh. Nisan is the month when Passover is celebrated. So since then, you'll find this in many of the books. Women take upon themselves not to do certain kinds of work. Not being a woman, I don't know if this is still in vogue today. I imagine some women still feel like it's a very special day for them. And so, in recognition of the women's courage and devotion, they were rewarded with a special holiday called Rosh Chodesh. And in some of the books, you'll find a listing of things that they are free not to do. You don't have to knit today. You don't have to wash today. You don't have to wash clothes today. You don't have to whatever. All some of the domestic kinds of things. Women don't do on the first day of the new Hebrew month. Many synagogues have women's Rosh Chodesh groups, women gathering together with women in the synagogue or perhaps in somebody's home to say special prayers for the month, to sing special songs for the month, to write among them even special prayers that they hope could be fulfilled for the month. Some of these women's prayer groups on Rosh Chodesh will sing and dance around the tables or wherever. There are many like that, many like that. Now, will you find those groups in the very, very Orthodox sector of the Jewish people? Probably not. Probably not, for one reason or another. But you would find it in otherwise Orthodox communities. You would find it in conservative, Reformed Jews also have women's Rosh Chodesh groups, um, and other Reconstructionist, humanist. So that's become a very popular thing for women to get together and to put their energies together on the first day of Rosh Chodesh. Um, at the Western Wall, this is a big to-do at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, in the Old City, going on now for, I think, between 25 and 30 years. There's a group called the Women of the Wall that gather at the Kotel, at the wall, every Rosh Chodesh. The very religious don't like it because they want a Torah scroll. They want to read in the women's section the special reading that you read from the Torah on Rosh Chodesh. They find it abhorrent. They throw chairs at them. This is not a proud thing that I report at all. I'll call it the way I see it. It's disgusting to go over to the women who are part of this group and to throw their prayer books on the floor and to take away their Torah scroll. And they're not allowed to come into the precinct of the Western Wall, the Kotel, with any kind of a scroll of their own. Okay, so you don't want us to use the scrolls that are there. We'll bring one. No, you can't bring one. And every month there's always a big to-do. And frankly, for me, it's an embarrassment because I don't think that the Kotel is a Orthodox synagogue. The Kotel is for everybody. They're not sitting there with bikinis, having rum and cokes. They're trying to do what they feel is a spiritual matter. And my feeling is let them, because it's everybody's wall. It's everybody's precinct. And I don't think it's for anybody to dictate who does what and how, unless it's really extreme. If you're very extreme in front of the hotel, then maybe you don't belong there or don't belong doing what you're doing there. But short of that, you're worshiping, you're reading the Torah. But as predictable as the sun going down at the end of the day, that's how it's predictable that there's always a major scuffle on Rosh Chodesh with this women of the wall. So I'm sorry that it happens that way. It's not the way I would do things, but nobody asked me.
Rabbi, Scott just texted me and apologized. He has bad service, so he just want to let you know.
Oh, okay.
He
I
he got
appreciate
kicked
that.
off, so
I appreciate that. Wow. Is he now coming back on?
that looks like it's Ryan, so he may be in the same predicament.
Oh, okay. All right. So, well, whoever can make it, that's great. There you go. There you go, Mr. Beautiful Shofar in the blue shofar cover.
Yeah, sorry about that. My kids were calling me and I didn't realize it hung up on this when I answered the call. So
Okay. Well, glad to have you back. So
I'm here.
let's talk a little bit more about Rosh Chodesh. It doesn't rank as a full holiday. It doesn't have that status as a full Jewish holiday, but it does have a festive character. So on most Jewish festivals, we say a prayer called the Hallel, chapters 113 through 118 of the book of Psalms. Do we say that on Rosh Chodesh, even though it's not a biblical festival day? We do. So in that way, it's made special. There are special prayers that are said in the prayer book on Rosh Chodesh. And so Rosh Chodesh has these special prayers. There's a special Torah reading on that day. And it's really mostly in Israel when, if it's Rosh Chodesh that day or it's coming up the upcoming day, people will wish each other. It's more of a Yiddish phrase, a guten Chodesh. Guten means good. You should have a good month. In other words, there's an awareness out on the street that there is a Rosh Chodesh coming up. Or they will say, Chodesh Tov, have a good month. Happy Rosh Chodesh. When I was living in America, I don't remember me ever saying that, except in the synagogue where everybody's leaving the Rosh Chodesh services, and people wish each other have a good month, whatever. But here, you're buying a grocery, you're buying a donut, you're getting asparagus, you leave the store, have a good Chodesh. In other words, there's a consciousness about it that I find here that I did not find in the communities where I lived in America. So, but thank God here in Israel, where we live the rhythm of the calendar. That's the way we live here in Israel, the rhythm of the calendar. Um, so people have a greater awareness that Rosh Chodesh is either happening now, today, or it's coming up. And I personally like that. I like it that people know when these 12 transitions of the year are happening. Are there any work restrictions related to Rosh Chodesh? Like on Shabbat, we don't do X, Y, and Z. On holidays, we don't do X, Y, and Z. Are there any work restrictions related to Rosh Chodesh? And the answer is zero. No restrictions on any kind of work or labor. It's a nice, can be chill. Or if it's not so chill, the Kabbalah always comes in with its interpretation that always has a little bit more depth. And the Kabbalah sees Rosh Chodesh as a time for spiritual assessment and renewal, like you would have at any natural beginning of anything. So when people say to me on Rosh Chodesh, is it appropriate to reassess or to assess how you're doing spiritually? And my answer is, whoa, yeah. If you can do that, blessings on your head, mazel tov, mazel tov. That's a good reason to have a Rosh Chodesh. The 12 times a year, you're assessing, not just before Rosh Hashanah, the High Holy Day or Yom Kippur, but every month at the beginning, you're assessing, have I accomplished what I'm looking to accomplish spiritually? How do I get more focused about that? What if I only was on my cell phone 6 hours a day instead of 12 hours a day? Imagine what I could accomplish if I was less on social media, whatever you're doing. The Kabbalah sees it as a time for spiritual assessment and renewal. It's time for rededicating ourselves to our core morals and principles, to God and His commandments. So to do that 12 times a year, I think, as they say, it can't hurt. You know what I mean? It can't hurt to assess your spirituality in such a formal way 12 times a year. I think that's very lovely. So I already mentioned if there are 30 days in a Jewish month, there's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. If there's only 29 days in the Jewish month previous, there's a 1-day Rosh Chodesh. The next one will be June 15 and 16. Let me just mention these couple of thoughts and then I'll leave it open for questions. In Kabbalah, Rosh Chodesh is viewed as a highly spiritual window in time, where a fresh influx of divine energy and new light is introduced into the world for the upcoming month. Not only it's a new light, but it's a light that has never been exposed into the world before. So you would say, can you detect it? Can anybody detect this new light? Is there a new light meter? Like, how do you know that? I don't know how I know that. I know that this is how Kabbalah puts its overlay on what would otherwise be like an average simple day with no work restrictions. You shove in a couple of extra pairs, and you could easily come to see it as a very light kind of a day. But Kabbalah is always interested in taking that which is superficial or can be seen as superficial and investing it with some divine energy. So, according to Kabbalah, Rosh Chodesh contains the spiritual DNA for the coming 29 or 30 days, as if to indicate what you're doing on that Rosh Chodesh day or days is making a huge difference in your life, in your spiritual life, in the life of the country, in the life of the Jewish people, in the life of the world. And how we treat Rosh Chodesh can actively shape and attract blessings for the entire month. Again, how do you detect it? How do you measure it? Thank you for not asking. Last thing I'll mention on Rosh Hashanah, there can be study groups learning about and discussing the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is a Hebrew word that has the connotation of God's concentrated and intimate feminine presence in the world. As opposed to God the lawgiver, God the exactor. Here's what I said. How come you didn't listen? The Shekhinah is seen as more of a motherly figure, an embracing, intimate, caring spirit in the world that we call the Shekhinah. So you might find on Rosh Chodesh study groups that are learning more about the Shekhinah from the Kabbalah perspective. What is it all about? How do we know it's there? How do we feel it, detect it? How do we advance it? How do we maximize it? So these are just some thoughts about Rosh Chodesh. Again, easily could be an average, plain, humdrum day. Judaism says it's got a lot more power and punch than that. So let's try to maximize it, to really make something of it, because it could change our month and by extension, our 12-time assessment every year during the year of our accomplishments, achievements, where would we like to go from here spiritually. That doesn't change just the month. That can change the entire way you live your life. So I think Judaism is pretty good at that, taking the mundane, the average, the humdrum, and turning it into something that really has great spiritual potential. Okay, so any thoughts, any comments, any observations? Did you learn
Just a quick,
anything today?
yeah, I just had a quick question. Can you talk more about the Yom Kippur Katan? And is that why we see it as a reflection from a spiritual perspective because of that, or is that not related?
It's related only in the sense that it's seen as a way to atone for Adam eating the forbidden fruit. So you would say, what's that got to do with the Rosh Chodesh? And I'm not exactly sure what that connection is. In my whole lifetime, which is 71 years so far, I've celebrated Rosh Yom Kippur Katan one time. I said, let me go to the Jerusalem Great Synagogue. I know they have a special program, special prayers. Let me go. I don't even know if I fasted. I said, let me go to it. I know there's going to be a choir. They're going to be singing, praying, dancing, whatever. Let me try it. Um, I guess I felt something for the moment. I don't know that I felt much beyond that. but it's only once. So if I went many times, I could by now be getting a whole lot more out of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's not the greatest kept day, but many people use it as an opportunity for atonement. But again, how does that connect, Adam, eating of the forbidden fruit with Rosh Chodesh? That was a thread that I didn't catch clearly. Yeah. Anybody else have a thought, comment, question? Something I can clarify or muddy up even more than before you asked the question, before you even asked the question? Okay, great. All right, so God willing, this has been 2 out of the 4 sessions we're doing in this series. I'll let you know what the next Wednesday is, God willing, and the following Wednesday. And then we'll take a brief break and see where we want to go from there. So, but let me thank all of you for being here tonight, for me tonight, for you, Day. I can see day everywhere you are. I can see daytime. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you,
And
Rabbi.
my pleasure. Bob, you have a question?
Mute.
You just have to unmute.
Did you say that, because I didn't see it on our WhatsApp, Rivka hasn't posted last week's yet.
Yeah, she'll be getting to it. She also
Okay.
wasn't feeling that well. So now she'll be posting both of these last week and today, God willing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on last week.
I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. It's a good thing. All
Okay.
right. Be well, be blessed, and
Thank
have a
you.
great week and a Shabbat Shalom eventually. And
Shabbat shalom.
God willing, we'll
Shabbat
see you
shalom.
next Wednesday.
All
See
right.
you.
Thanks.
All righty. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.